There's no hope whatsoever. Our species will be extinguished probably in a couple of generations, maybe even before that, depending upon the microbes of the world, and of course the potential for a nuclear war, not to mention, as in my short story Chicxulub, when that comet comes back again. So we're all doomed. Everything sucks. I have no good news for anybody. Other authors want to make their audience feel good. I want everybody to feel really bad. Just joking. I'm writing about the environment. It obsesses me. Our place as a species on this planet. We are animals, and yet we're something else too. And how do those two elements of us intersect, and what does it mean for this environment? People say, save the Earth. Well, the Earth, as far as we know, will be here for another 3.5 billion years until, of course, the sun becomes a yellow giant and burns us to a cinder like a charcoal briquette. But really, what the environmentalists are saying is, let's save the planet under the conditions that allowed our species to arise. Well, of course, we're not doing this. You remember in 2000, I wrote A Friend of the Earth about global warming. Well, here we are. So I wish I had better news. What sustains me mentally, although after this interview people may question whether I have been sustained mentally, is nature and my art. When I'm doing my art, I am revolving these questions in my mind. I don't begin with a political point. I just let it flow and see what it is. And secondly, being in nature. I'm in nature a lot. Within the week ago, I was in the high Sierras every day by myself, sitting by a creek deep in the woods, just meditating on good things like the joy of being an animal in nature, of smelling the breeze, of listening to the water, of seeing the various creatures that are coming by. You know, there's a lot of wildlife in the Sierra Nevada. I go out every day and I see things like ants and biting flies. One of the problems with a novelist trying to take the facts of real life and meditate on them and make a fiction is that because of the internet, we have instant access to everything all the time and all information. So a lot of the bizarre news stories that I would meditate on and write about, particularly for short stories in the beginning of my career, were known only to me. They were my stories. Now everybody knows these stories immediately, and they're all writing their things about it. So it's difficult in the information age to find your own little story. But so far, I think I've been able to do it. For instance, the New Yorker will shortly publish a new story of mine from this collection I was telling you about, and it's called Are We Not Men? And it's about CRISPR technology, which obsesses me. You know, this is a gene editing technology which makes it much easier to edit genes in other species. In fact, if you subscribe to Nature and Science, as I do, for, the past year, there's a huge ad right in the beginning of a boxing glove on a fist, and it says, knock out any gene. They're selling kits to amateurs, to anybody, to play with various bacteria and gene edit these bacteria. Is this a good idea? I don't think so. And of course, in my telling, we're just projecting slightly into the future when we can make new species. Not to mention the parent who wants to get his kid into the best school. Give me a break. I mean, it'll be like buying a new car when you have a kid. You know, you go, you see how the genes line up, and you pick whatever you want. You want 8 foot tall. You want orange eyes. You want somebody who can run the 100-yard dash in 9 seconds. That's what it's coming to. So we're not going to be humans anymore, which I guess is no great loss. You know, I don't think that politics and art mix. If you have a political point to get across, well, give a speech, write an essay. But art is supposed to be a seduction, and you invite, in this case, a reader in as your equal to to make the same discoveries that you make. So I don't know what any story or novel will be. It just happens and evolves. And as it does, of course, I'm seeing what it means thematically. I'm seeing how the characters develop and so on. I mean, there is an element of controlling mind, but 90% of what I'm doing in the unconscious state is just happening. The joy of it is in the doing, of course, because it gives you something to do every day in life rather than just look at the wall and contemplate suicide. So that's very rewarding. The most rewarding moment is when you see it come together and you finish any project, whether it's a short story or a novel. It is an exhilaration, a rush, a tremendous rush of exhilaration, which lasts for maybe half a day, and then you face the fact that you're completely bankrupt of ideas, worthless, you'll never write again, and then you have to worry about writing the next one. For me, it's a kind of iron discipline and a routine daily, the same thing over and over. I have recently begun to use Twitter as a kind of performance space. And the performance is this. Here you have entree to the glamorous life of an international literary celebrity, moi. But really, it's a shtick. And the shtick is, I'm a schmuck like anybody else. So the first selfie I ever took, for instance, I was showing the tweetsters me cleaning the muck out of the pond. And I had two beautiful buckets of black muck. And I leaned over to photograph them, and I realized, wait a minute, my face is showing in the muck. So I took a muck selfie. So I'm having fun, I'm joking, I take a picture, make a quip, of course, but this is my daily life. And I think underneath it all is a serious intent, and that is my routine. I need it so desperately. So I show them, I love a shtick also, I show them the same thing every day. The same street scene in the morning, and the same blank screen. And then I talk about what I'm working on, and then the screen goes blank for a while because I'm working. So I do kind of emphasize that, particularly with a long project, you have to stay at it, and it doesn't always go well. But you have to fight through all of those bad moments. I always, by the way, keep a loaded .357 Magnum pistol right next to me on the desk in case it doesn't go well. That's a more good advice, I think, for beginning writers. Plus, it cuts down the surplus population. Writer's block is the kind of thing that does make you use that gun, or at the very least, you wind up wrapped in chains in the sub-basement in the mental hospital. You can't go there. Yes, of course, I have periods in which it's not working, but I try to work through it. I just delivered a new book of short stories to my publisher for next year, and I was drumming myself up to start doing this in January after I delivered the Terranauts last fall, and I just couldn't come up with anything. You know, it just wasn't working, and it took me a while until finally the first story began to come, and it was so hard, and I read it over and over. But then a little period blossomed, and I wound up writing the 7 that I needed to complete the collection until very recently, when I'm now starting to do research for a new novel. So, yes, you do have periods when you're not inspired, but, you know, if you're an artist, all you want to do is make art. So that's a tremendous motivating factor. I mean, I do, you know, occasionally make love to my wife, and once in a while have a nice meal, you know, clean up the house, take the dog for a walk. But basically, you know, I'm living in order to make art.